Have you ever wondered what can happen when someone believes that power gives them the right to judge, humiliate, and decide who belongs in a particular place and who doesn't? Imagine for a moment a silent courtroom laden with formality, where every movement seems calculated and every glance weighs more than words. The atmosphere is cold, solemn, almost intimidating. Lawyers organize papers, the judge prepares, the audience observes in silence. It is into this setting that a powerful billionaire enters, self-assured, with firm steps and the posture of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. He doesn't ask permission, he expects submission. After all, in his mind, that space also seems to respond to his authority. Now, in the corner of the room, almost invisible to many, sits a black woman, discreet, sitting silently, without drawing attention. She doesn't raise her voice, doesn't impose herself with exaggerated gestures, doesn't seek gazes. She simply observes. And it is precisely there that the first silent judgment begins. Before any word is spoken, before any formal introduction, the gazes do their cruel work. Who is she? Why is she there? Does she belong in this environment? Have you ever experienced this? Entering a place and feeling that you need to prove in seconds that you deserve to be there. As the billionaire confidently advances, the contrast becomes increasingly evident. On one side, economic power, arrogance disguised as authority, the habit of being treated as someone above the rules. On the other, a presence that doesn't fit the stereotypes many carry, and it is precisely in this silent clash that the story begins to gain momentum. What you are about to discover may surprise you, because those who seem to be in charge are not always the ones who truly control the situation. The atmosphere in the courtroom grows denser. The silence ceases to be neutral and becomes unsettling. There's something in the air, an invisible tension, as if everyone senses that something is about to happen. The billionaire looks around and, noticing that black woman there, seemingly out of place, his gaze hardens. To him, that presence makes no sense, and when someone believes they know exactly who's in charge, any detail that deviates from their norm becomes a nuisance. Stay with me until the end, because this isn't just another story of humiliation. It's a story of poetic justice, of social upheaval, and of a mistake made in front of witnesses, a mistake born from prejudice, the haste to judge, and the false sense of superiority. How many times are people silenced simply for not conforming to the image someone expects to see? While no one says anything, the judgment continues to unfold behind the scenes of the mind. The billionaire doesn't ask questions. He assumes. He makes assumptions. He decides, unaware that every second of that silence is building something much bigger. The woman remains there, firm, serene, as if understanding that some answers don't need to be given immediately. And perhaps that's exactly what's most unsettling. The tranquility of someone who knows who they are, even when others don't. The courtroom, which seemed like just another bureaucratic setting, begins to transform into the stage for one of the greatest power reversals imaginable. The audience doesn't yet understand, but you, the viewer, can already sense that nothing there is exactly what it seems, because when prejudice speaks louder, the fall is usually even more painful. And it is from this first silent judgment, this gaze that condemns without proof, that the story truly begins to unfold. And what comes next completely changes the course of everything. And perhaps that's exactly why this story disturbs not only those inside the courtroom, but also those watching from the outside. Because on some level, many people have felt the weight of a judgmental gaze that hears before listening, of a presence that seems wrong simply because it doesn't meet expectations. If this topic resonates with you, if any part of this scene has happened in your life or in the life of someone close to you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. Sometimes, sharing your own experience helps others realize they are not alone. While this tension builds in the room, it's worth remembering that stories like this only gain strength when they reach more people. When you like this video, it's not just an automatic click. It's a way of saying that this type of content matters, that these narratives need to be told and seen. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people who also need to reflect on justice, prejudice, and unexpected twists. And if you feel that this type of story captures your attention, moves you, and provokes reflection, subscribing to the channel is almost like saying, "I want to keep listening." This is what allows new stories to reach you with the same intensity, the same care, and the same truth. Here, every comment, every like, and every subscription helps keep this conversation alive, a conversation that is often ignored in other spaces. Because at its core, this isn't just the story of a billionaire and a black woman in a courtroom. It's about what happens when someone believes they can determine another person's worth in seconds. And as the silence in that room begins to become unbearable, a simple action changes everything. And that's when the story takes an even more unexpected turn. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because it's precisely at this point that the story ceases to be just an uncomfortable scene and transforms into something that reveals a great deal about mentality, power, and decisions made in seconds. The billionaire, annoyed, doesn't wait for explanations. He abruptly interrupts the audience, breaks protocol, and invades a space that doesn't belong to him at that moment. His voice echoes through the room, laden with authority forged by money and the habit of being obeyed. He doesn't ask who that woman is. He doesn't try to understand the context. He simply points, questions her presence, and orders her to leave, as if he were expelling someone irrelevant, someone who in his mind shouldn't be there. The silence that follows is heavy, almost suffocating. No one reacts immediately. Some people look away, others pretend to be busy with papers and screens. There is embarrassment, but there is also fear. Fear of confronting someone powerful, fear of taking a stand, fear of the consequences. This is one of the cruelest backstage aspects of power. It's not just the humiliation itself, but the collective silence that accompanies it. The black woman remains seated for a few seconds, and this brief interval seems eternal. It's as if time slows down so that everyone can feel the impact of that unjust order. At that moment, public humiliation becomes clear. It's no longer subtle, done only with glances. Now it's explicit. It's verbal. It's an attempt at expulsion in front of witnesses. And the hardest part is realizing how common this type of situation still is in decision-making environments, where appearances and prejudices speak louder than the hidden truth about who is really there. The scene exposes a dangerous mentality, that of those who believe that economic power equals absolute authority, even in spaces where rules, laws, and responsibilities should be paramount. The woman rises slowly, not in immediate obedience, but with a posture that draws attention. There is no despair, no apology, no hasty justification. Her face remains firm, almost serene. This detail changes everything, because at that moment, the humiliation ceases to be solely about her and becomes about the one who inflicts it. The silent journey of this woman, marked by experiences unknown to anyone there, begins to weigh heavily in the air. It's as if each of her steps carries an entire story of transformation, resistance, and choices made long before that hearing. The billionaire, on the other hand, seems increasingly convinced that he is right. He reinforces the order, insists, gestures. Arrogance mixes with impatience. For him, it's just another simple decision made without reflection. But decisions made like that, on impulse, often reveal much more than a person imagines. They reveal deep beliefs, unquestioned prejudices, an uncomfortable truth about how certain people see the world and those around them. The emotional impact of the scene spreads throughout the room. Some feel indignation, some feel shame, some want to intervene, but don't. And this collective silence also tells a story. It shows how often injustices happen not only because of someone's actions, but because of the inaction of many. It is at this point that the narrative ceases to be just about an isolated humiliation and begins to engage with the personal experiences of those watching, who has never witnessed something wrong and remained silent, who has never seen someone belittled and felt that tightness in their chest, not knowing what to do. Meanwhile, the woman remains at the center of the scene, not as a passive victim, but as someone who seems to understand something that others do not yet see. There is a silent strength in the way she stands, a strength that does not shout, does not threaten, does not need to impose itself. It is a strength built over a journey involving difficult choices, social impact, and a deep relationship with her own identity. The humiliation they try to impose on her begins to transform, little by little, into an uncomfortable mirror for everyone there. The judge observes everything attentively. The aides exchange quick glances. There's a growing unease, a feeling that something is out of control. The attempted expulsion, which should have ended the matter quickly, ends up opening a crack in the narrative of power that the billionaire has built for himself. It's as if, without realizing it, he pulled the wrong thread and began to reveal something that was hidden behind the scenes of that hearing. The hidden truth has not yet been spoken, but it is already present. It manifests itself in the woman's posture, in the tension of the atmosphere, in the silence that now weighs more than any word. The public humiliation, which seemed the pinnacle of a powerful man's authority, begins to take on a different meaning. It becomes the turning point in a story about revelations, about the fragility of those who believe they are above everything, and about how true power often reveals itself when least expected. And it is precisely at this moment, when everyone believes the situation is settled, that the atmosphere changes almost imperceptibly. Something begins to align, like pieces of a puzzle about to fit together. The courtroom, once the stage for an arrogant order, transforms into a space of silent expectation. Because when someone tries to humiliate another without knowing their story, the risk of being caught off guard is always greater. Before moving on, write in the comments, "That makes sense to me." Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is precisely here that the story shifts to a new layer and begins to reveal something far more subtle than simple public humiliation. The woman doesn't react as many would expect. There is no emotional outburst, no direct confrontation, no harsh words. Instead, she remains silent, a firm, conscious, almost calculated silence. And this silence, little by little, begins to bother her more than any aggressive response could cause. She observes. She observes the billionaire. She observes the surroundings. She observes the reactions around her. There's something about her posture that doesn't match someone who should simply lower her head and leave. It's not explicit defiance, but it's not submission either. It's presence. And presence, in certain contexts, speaks very loudly. The viewer begins to feel that there's something wrong with that initial reading, that the scene isn't complete, that there's a hidden truth there, waiting for the right moment to manifest itself. Strategic silence begins to crack the billionaire's certainty. He expected resistance or immediate obedience. He wasn't prepared for calm. Calm disarms. Calm pulls the rug out from under those who act impulsively and arrogantly. Every second it remains there, without leaving, without discussion, without justification, increases the general discomfort. The atmosphere changes. The energy of the room transforms. That order, which seemed definitive, begins to lose its force. The judge follows everything with heightened attention. His gaze is not neutral. He perceives nuances, gestures, what is not being said. There is a longer pause than usual, as if he were evaluating not only the formal situation, but the impact of that scene. Behind the scenes of the hearing, silent decisions begin to take shape. An assistant exchanges glances with another, adjusts their posture in the chair, nervously flips through documents. Small signs that go unnoticed by those who are not paying attention, but which reveal that something is not right. Doubt begins to spread. Why is she still there? Why hasn't she left? What does she know that no one else knows? This question begins to echo not only in the minds of those present, but also in those watching. The narrative takes the viewer out of the comfortable place of merely observing and places them inside the conflict, inviting them to question their own assumptions. How many times have we also judged a situation too quickly without understanding the full context? Her silence is not empty. It carries an entire journey. It carries difficult choices, decisions made away from the spotlight, experiences that shaped a solid mindset. It is a constructed silence, not an improvised one. And this begins to generate a profound psychological impact. The more she stands firm, the more evident it becomes that the humiliation did not achieve its intended goal. On the contrary, it seems to have activated something invisible, a silent movement that begins to turn the tables without anyone announcing anything. The billionaire realizes he has lost control of the narrative. He tries to regain authority with gestures, with harsher words, but it's no longer the same. Something has slipped away. The initial security gives way to a slight unease. The confident posture begins to crack. Because when someone doesn't react as expected, it forces the other person to confront their own certainties. And this internal confrontation is not always comfortable. The courtroom now seems smaller, the air is heavier, time seems to slow down. It's as if everyone is trapped in an interval, waiting for something that hasn't yet been said, but is already present. This invisible shift doesn't happen with an announcement, nor with a grand gesture. It happens in the details, in the judge's attentive gaze, in the assistant who avoids eye contact, in the silence that ceases to be awkward and becomes charged with expectation. At this point in the story, the initial humiliation begins to lose prominence. It becomes a backdrop for something bigger. The focus shifts from the billionaire's mistake to the woman's attitude. The narrative transformation happens there, silently, almost imperceptibly. It's the moment when the viewer realizes that true power doesn't always manifest itself with noise. Sometimes it reveals itself precisely in the ability to wait, to observe, and to choose the right moment. This invisible shift also prompts a deeper reflection on mindset, on how we react when we are underestimated, on how silence, when conscious, can be a powerful tool, on how decisions made calmly tend to have a much greater impact than impulsive reactions. The story begins to resonate with personal experiences, with situations where remaining silent was not a sign of weakness but of strategy. Nothing has been officially revealed yet. No identity has been confirmed. No authority has been announced, but everyone feels that something is about to emerge. The hidden truth is already circulating, even without a name. It's as if the courtroom itself is waiting for the exact moment when this story will cease to be about explicit prejudice and become about revelations that change everything. And it is in this state of suspension, when silence has already spoken louder than words, and the tension has reached a new level, that the narrative naturally advances to an even more delicate point. Because when someone remains firm without explaining anything, it is a sign that the explanation, when it comes, will have an impact that no one there is prepared to face. Before moving on, leave a comment below. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is precisely here that everything that seemed like mere silent tension transforms into explicit revelation. The atmosphere in the courtroom reaches a breaking point, as if everyone were holding their breath. The silence is no longer just uncomfortable, it is expectant. There is a collective feeling that something needs to be said, that this scene cannot remain suspended any longer. And it is at this exact moment that the truth, until then hidden, begins to reveal itself. The woman, who until then had remained firm and silent, finally speaks up. There is no haste in her voice, no trembling. Each word seems carefully chosen, as if she knows the weight of what she's about to say. She identifies herself, and when you do that, the entire room shifts. It's not just a casually mentioned position, it's the Attorney General, the highest legal authority present at that hearing, the person who, from the beginning, had every right to be there. More than that, had the responsibility to conduct, question, and directly influence the course of that process. The impact is immediate and almost physical. You can feel the collective shock rippling through the room. Eyes widen. The judge adjusts his posture, now with a completely different level of attention. The assistants, previously restless, stand motionless for a few seconds, as if they need to reorganize everything they believed was happening. Behind the scenes of that hearing, mental decisions are remade in real time. The narrative changes. The hierarchy reorganizes itself. Power changes hands without needing to raise a voice. The billionaire takes a few moments to process it. His face loses its initial rigidity. The confidence, built over years of economic influence, begins to crumble. It is the moment when he realizes, too late, that he not only made a mistake, but that he made a mistake in front of the person who had real authority over that space. The humiliation he tried to inflict returns with full force, now reversed, now inevitable, not as explicit revenge, but as a direct consequence of a decision made without reflection. This complete reversal of power is a clear illustration of how a mentality based solely on status and appearance can lead to abrupt falls. Money, which so often opens doors, serves no shield there. True authority is imposed through position, responsibility, and knowledge. And this is evident in the silence that follows the revelation. There is no applause, no commentary, only a collective understanding that something irreversible has happened. The Attorney General doesn't need to raise her voice. She doesn't need to remind anyone of her position. The environment has already done that for her. Each subsequent word carries a greater impact precisely because it comes after the revelation. Her journey to that point, invisible to many, now becomes part of the scene. A trajectory marked by difficult decisions, by silent confrontations, by choices that placed her in that position of ultimate authority. All of this begins to resonate without being directly stated. The billionaire tries to compose himself. He adjusts his jacket, clears his throat, avoids eye contact for a few seconds. The internal transformation is visible. He understands that he has lost control not only of the situation, but of the very narrative he constructed for himself. That audience, which he thought he dominated, now follows a completely different flow. The hidden truth has come to light, and with it, an impact that goes far beyond that specific moment. The collective shock is not only due to the revelation of the position, but also to the mirror it creates. Everyone there, in some way, is confronted with their own preconceived judgments. How many times have they underestimated someone because of their silence? How many times have they confused discretion with a lack of power? The scene becomes symbolic. It transcends the limits of that room and begins to engage with deeper questions about transformation, about how true power often walks silently until the right moment to manifest itself. Nothing is resolved in that instant. The hearing continues, but in a different tone, under a different atmosphere. The revelation doesn't end the story. It redefines it. The power shift doesn't need long speeches to be understood. It asserts itself through presence, posture, and the clarity of someone who has always been in the right place, even when no one noticed. And while the environment tries to reorganize itself after this shock, it becomes clear that the consequences of this revelation are only beginning to unfold. Because when the truth comes out in this way, it doesn't just affect the present moment, but alters future decisions, exposes behind-the-scenes events, and leaves deep scars on everyone involved. Before moving on, leave a comment below. That makes sense to me. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this is where the consequences begin to take shape and the story reveals its most symbolic layer, The billionaire's embarrassment can no longer be hidden. He tries to maintain a firm stance, but something within him has changed irreversibly. It's not just the mistake made in front of everyone, it's the belated realization that his hasty decision exposed a mindset built on shallow judgments and fragile certainties. The authority he believed he had in that space slowly dissolves, not through direct confrontation, but through the silent weight of reality. The change in posture is visible, gestures become restrained, words more measured. The man who entered the room believing he controlled everything now realizes he is being observed differently, not as someone above the rules, but as someone who has just learned, in the most public way possible, that power without discernment exacts a high price. This transformation doesn't happen in speeches, but in the details, the lower tone of voice, the excessive care when addressing the Attorney General, the evident discomfort at realizing that everyone witnessed his symbolic downfall. Poetic justice manifests itself precisely there. There is no explicit humiliation in return, no revenge. What exists is something much deeper and more impactful, the exposure of error in the face of truth. The billionaire is neither interrupted nor confronted aggressively. He is simply placed before the natural consequences of his own decisions. And this makes the scene even more powerful, because the justice that prevails doesn't shout, it doesn't need a spectacle. It presents itself with clarity, firmness, and silence. The entire atmosphere absorbs this lesson. The judge, now fully aware of the reversal that has occurred, conducts the hearing with even greater rigor. The assistants understand that this scene will be remembered long after that day. Behind the scenes, restrained comments begin to circulate, not about the woman, but about his mistake. The narrative is completely reversed. The one who previously judged is now judged, not by words, but by the attentive gaze of all who witnessed the scene. This symbolic power goes beyond that courtroom. It touches on something universal. How many decisions are made every day based on appearance, prejudice, and the rush to classify others? How many stories are interrupted before they even begin because someone unknowingly decided who deserved to be there? The scene transforms into an uncomfortable mirror, inviting the viewer to reconsider their own attitudes, their own choices, their own mindset. The woman, now fully recognized in her position, doesn't need to reaffirm anything. Her journey to that point has already spoken for itself. Years of preparation, of silent confrontation, of choices made away from the public eye culminated in that moment. And that is precisely what gives weight to the scene. Justice did not arise by chance, but from a trajectory built with consistency. The revelation merely made visible something that had always been there, hidden from the eyes of those who refused to see. The billionaire, in turn, carries with him a mark that doesn't appear in formal documents or records, but which has a profound impact. The realization that money doesn't buy discernment, that status doesn't replace respect, that decisions made without awareness can dismantle, in seconds, an image built over a lifetime. That is the true consequence, not the momentary embarrassment, but the forced change of perspective. The viewer, in following this journey, leaves not only with the feeling that a reverse humiliation was well executed, they leave with the understanding that justice, even when silent, finds unexpected ways to manifest itself. It doesn't need to be immediate or noisy. Sometimes it simply waits for the right moment, the wrong decision, the poorly chosen word, to reveal itself in full force. And as this story approaches a point of deeper reflection, it becomes clear that its impact doesn't end there. The consequences continue to reverberate, both in the lives of those involved and in the conscience of those who observe. Because every time someone is judged by their appearance, there is a risk of facing a truth far greater than imagined, and when that truth emerges, it not only corrects a situation but transforms mindsets, exposes behind-the-scenes events, and redefines entire journeys. Before moving on, leave a comment below. That makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, it's because this story in some way resonated with you. Perhaps it awakened memories, perhaps it provoked reflection, perhaps it simply made you look at certain situations more carefully. That's exactly why this channel exists. Subscribing is just a simple way of saying that this type of content makes sense to you, and that it's worth continuing to follow stories that speak of justice, choices, and transformations that often happen in silence. If you'd like, leave a simple sentence in the comments, just so I know you were with me until the end. You can write, "This message was for me." These comments help keep this conversation alive and show that what is being said here really reaches those who need to hear it. And if, at any point, you felt that connection, that tightness in your chest, or that's exactly it, leave a like on the video. Not as an automatic gesture, but as a sign that this exchange was worthwhile. Now, there's a video over here that complements this topic and delves even deeper into this type of story. Click and continue reading there.